Hello. Today we're going to take a look at the process for contributing and consuming UI translations within Morpheus, including the general process of how new contributions are built into the product, how to set the language on the appliance itself, and also how the process of contributing works, including contributing through the Crowdin web UI, which you're looking at part of that here, as well as through a plugin in Morpheus itself, which allows you to submit translations from within the UI itself, which can help for seeing certain messages in context, which may help from a translation perspective. So to start out, let's talk about the general process as well. Morpheus uses Crowdin to manage its UI translations. The website for that is just crowdin.com. Anyone can go and create a free account, and then you'll need access to the Morpheus project in order to begin contributing. If you don't currently have access, you'd know if you did because you'd look on your profile page like I'm on here, and the Morpheus project should appear there if you have access to it. If you don't, reach out to your account team and we can make sure that you have access. Morpheus allows anyone to contribute UI translations, and then we have a QA process that reviews those before they actually make it into the product. But assuming that you do have access to the project, as I do here, you'll be able to contribute. There's two different roles. You can have a contributor's role, which allows you to submit potential new translations. You can also have a QA role, which allows you to QA, approve translated messages, and any that are QA approved will automatically be built into the product on the next release. So let's take a look at UI translations in Morpheus itself. If we go to my Morpheus appliance here, there's a couple of different ways that we can set the UI translation language. I'm here in administration settings. This is just the main appliance tab. And if I go down here, I have default appliance locale. Now this is going to be a global setting, and this is going to automatically apply for every user if they haven't set a specific language to override for their own personal use. So right now I have this set on English United States. I can choose from any number of these other languages that Morpheus supports, and that we have UI translations, at least to some degree, made available. Now, most of these are very complete, but not all of them are 100% complete, so it is possible for some languages you may see the vast majority of things translated, but a few things, especially newer things that maybe our translators and contributors haven't had a chance to get to yet, those may be falling back to English United States if there's no new translation, but a lot of the ones that we have in the list here are overwhelmingly by and large complete. So you can select here, and that's going to set a default for your users. Now each user also has his or her own user settings section. So if I go into mine here real quick, you'll see I have my default locale here. Now I could, this will override the global settings. So if you work for a company that's in one particular country, they may have a global default set for their appliance, and if you work in a different country or you're from a different country, speak a different language, you can set your own override here, and that's going to apply just to your own user account. So just to demonstrate, let's set mine to French. Again, this isn't the global, so you know, if I were to log into another account on my particular appliance, I'm still going to see the English US, but now my specific account is overriding that language, and we can see that French is a very complete translation set in Morpheus, so you're going to see that by and large almost everything is going to have the appropriate translation there. And then it's just easy to reverse that back to a different language if needed. So now I'm back to English United States. So that's how we can toggle the languages. But let's take a look at Crowdin itself to see the process of translation. As I mentioned previously, this is my user profile page with Crowdin. Again, crowdin.com if you need to create a new account, Crowdin. And I'm going to click on the Morpheus project. That's the only one that my account is currently a part of. And here we can take a look at all of the different languages that we have a translation project going for. Now, bear in mind, I'm an administrator within the Morpheus Crowdin project. So you are going to see more here potentially than you would see in your own account. For instance, if you have a translator's role and you're specifically a translator for one language, you may only see one, or two languages, you may only see two. I see every language because I'm an administrator in the project. So you may not see as many languages. But let's say that we were going to contribute to Brazilian Portuguese, which is mostly complete, but there's still some work to be done here. We can see that it's 64% QA approved, and then we have 71% translated with this little green bar representing what has been translated but not yet QA approved. So if I click into this, we next need to go to the messages.properties. All of the translations are going to take place in messages.properties, so you won't see anything else in this particular list. So we go into messages.properties, and that's going to load up the default view, which is to show you everything that's untranslated. So this is going to be for anything and everything. This could be the name of a menu item. This could be the heading on a modal. This could be a label for a specific field on a modal. This could be part of an error message or a warning message. Anything and everything that is a UI string that you would see in the UI in any context is going to be here. Now, with this particular language being, approximately 3/4 translated, most of the really big stuff is going to already be covered. So, your main menu heading items, provisioning, library, those kind of things, those have long since been translated. So what we're left with here is, some of the modal headings, maybe some of the lesser used modal headings, some of the lesser used clouds, some of the lesser noticed UI error or warning messages are going to be the ones that are left. We can take a look at any of these as an example. Let's just take the first one that's here. So the default US English translation that comes with the UI is upper limit for average free memory. Now, if we were going to enter a custom translation, I won't do that now, not being a native speaker of Brazilian Portuguese, but if I were, I could go ahead and enter my own translation here and then click save. That would be how I would save a custom translation. You'll also see that there's some additional items down here. This is a suggested translation. So this is going to come from, this is going to be through machine learning. It's going to be through outside translation services, and it's going to take a best guess. Sometimes these will be overly literal to where they sound awkward or don't really make sense to a native speaker, which is why we don't just shove all of these in there and call it a day. But if you are a contributor and this makes sense, we can just simply click on this and then save that. Or up here would be where we would put in our own custom translation. So that's the first step in the process. The new translation gets saved, and then it's awaiting QA. As you recall earlier when I was talking about this, we don't actually put them into the product until they're both translated and then QA approved. So it's going to sit in a queue waiting for someone with the QA role to come through and approve that particular translation. So if you are a QA, have the QA role, we can actually change this view to just not approved. So here we're looking at untranslated. Now we're going to look at non-approved. So these are strings that have had a translation submitted, but they haven't yet been approved. So we can see the US English string here. We can see the recommended, one of our contributors has entered this string in Portuguese as the translation, and I could, if I wanted to, click this check mark to approve it. Not being a native speaker of the language, I'm not going to do that, but if I were to click this, that would now be a QA approved string, and on the next version release, this would make it into the product. So at the time that I'm recording this, our latest version is 5.4.5. If I were to go ahead and approve this, then it would be in the next release of the product, which is coming very soon. So there's going to be a 5.4.6. There's also soon going to be a 5.5.0. If I were to QA approve this, that translated string would now appear in the new version. So whether you're a translator or you're an approver, that's how you would do it. You can either look at all the untranslated and you can start filling them in as a contributor, or you can look at all of the not approved if you have QA rights, and you can go through and start checking these and QA approving them. One other thing to note, in some of the strings to be translated, you'll see a number inside of curly braces like we see here, and that is where a variable would be resolved within that UI message. So here we can see a 0 inside of a curly brace. When that is there in the US English default string, we need to make sure that's also in the translated string as well, or else the proper variable won't be resolved there when this particular message is viewed in the translated language. So jumping back into Morpheus, let's look at one additional way that users can contribute as well. So I've shown you the Crowdin UI, but we also have a plugin that allows you to submit these translations directly within the Morpheus UI itself. And the way that you do that is by adding a plugin, the Crowdin plugin, to Morpheus. You can find the Crowdin plugin on the Morpheus Exchange. That's at share.morpheusdata.com. Share.morpheusdata.com. If we look at the just the full list view, you can see we have a number of plugins that are here. If we click into one, this is the Crowdin plugin. We can see which versions of Morpheus that it's compatible with. You download the plugin jar file, and then it's very easy to add those to Morpheus. You just go to Administration, Integrations, and then the Plugins tab. You can see here that I've already added the Crowdin plugin, but if it wasn't here, I could click this to browse for it on my local computer. Now with the Crowdin plugin added, let's see what that gives us. First and foremost, there's a couple things we need to check that are going to determine whether the Crowdin plugin is going to work for us. First of all, we need to have an outbound connection to crowdin.com from the Morpheus appliance. So this won't work for any, on any dark site appliances or anything like that. We need to have that outbound connection. We also need to make sure that white label settings are enabled. Those are in administration settings, and if you go to white label, you just need to make sure that this is checked. If you haven't entered anything down here, then the look of your appliance itself won't actually change. But if there are some things down here, then the look of the appliance itself may actually change by enabling white labeling. But it is required in order for the Crowdin plugin to work. Of course, you also need access to the Crowdin Morpheus project, as we discussed earlier. If you do need to get that, reach out to your account team, and we'll make sure that you get set up, as we welcome contributions from as many people as possible. So with those prerequisites out of the way, let's see what that plugin actually gives us. If we go back into user settings, once again in the default locale, we'll have a new entry. This translate with Crowdin is added by virtue of associating the plugin with our appliance. So let's go ahead and click on that, translate with Crowdin, and then if we save, the appliance is going to reload, and I have this already set up to begin translating in Brazilian Portuguese once again, as I said before. If we need to change anything like that, we can go into this little panel down here. We can, choose a different language and click change. We can log out if it's the wrong account. We can log in if we're not currently logged in. So this little pane can help us to work with some of the account and language related stuff on the Crowdin side. But once we have that set, it's very easy to see the different translations in context and translate them. So if any of these that are outlined in green, that means there's a translated and approved string in the target language. So we can see that here. We have the Portuguese string there. If they're in blue, that means that a translation has been provided, but it hasn't been QA approved. So we still see email there. Red means it has not been translated and, of course, also not been approved. So we can see here that current password, that string has not been translated by any of our translators on the project. If we wanted to be the one to contribute that, we can click the edit button. And then you're going to see something here that's very similar to what we saw on the Crowdin console itself. We can see the US English string. We can enter our translation here, and then we can hit save. Just like before, if we were a reviewer, we could click this check mark and say that, yes, this is an approved translation for this word in the target language. So that's the Crowdin plugin, and to get out of that, we can just set any one of the other languages that are there, and then we can click save. So that's how the translation process works within Morpheus. We use Crowdin, as I mentioned at the beginning, CROWDIN, create an account there. And then if you want to be a translator on one or more of our language projects, feel free to reach out to your translation team, to your account team, sorry. And then we also saw how we can contribute those translations from within Crowdin itself, as well as by uploading the plugin, how we can translate those directly within Morpheus UI. Anything that's approved, as I mentioned before, will get automatically rolled into the next build. There's a new LTS build that comes out every the second Tuesday of every month. And you can tell if it's an LTS version because the second number in the version number will be even. So I mentioned earlier, our latest version currently is 5.4.5. That second digit being 4, that's an even number, so we know that's an LTS release. A new LTS release on our current LTS branch comes out the second Tuesday of every month. Our standard branches come out as they are ready, so they're not on a fixed release schedule, but those would have a second digit as an odd number. So I mentioned a minute ago that we're about to release 5.5.0. That's going to be our latest feature branch, not LTS branch, and those will come out as they're ready, so they don't have the fixed release schedule. But anything that is QA approved within Crowdin before the next version of Morpheus is built will be there when the download goes available on Morpheus Hub. So thanks in advance for any translations you might contribute, and we look forward to getting as many people involved in the translation project as possible. Thank you.